So today we're going to talk about business strategy and HR planning. What does business strategy even mean, and what is the implication for HR? That's what we're talking about today on the HR Hub. I am Andrea Adams, and this is a show where we talk about everything related to HR with expert guests. You can also find me on YouTube. Today my guest is again Len Nanjad. Len and I did some organization design episodes about a year ago, and they're some of my most popular episodes to date, so I'm happy to have him back. Len is also a consultant with MNP. Hi, Len. How are you?
Hi, Andrea. I'm great. Thanks for having me back.
Well, thanks for coming on. Those other ones are so successful. You obviously have some thoughts to share, and so today we're talking about business strategy, and this is different than maybe HR strategy. So when you're talking about business strategy, what do you mean?
So when you talk about what is business strategy, the really most simple way that I've found over the years to sort of clarify that in my head is really to clarify four components of any kind of strategy. The first is goals. Like, what are you trying to achieve? We want to grow 20%. We want to enter the US market and grow a certain amount. We got to get new customers. We want to beat some competition at this. We want to be seen as the best customer service organization in our competitive industry. Even as simple as we just want to stay in business. It's still a goal, right? Because there's a cost of doing business, and at a minimum, financially, you're going to want to be able to cover that cost.
Yeah.
So first thing is goals. Second thing is what most entrepreneurs will call product market fit, or basically what is the focus on what you're providing and who are you providing it to, right? And that fit for a customer or client or citizen constituent base. So what is it am I providing to who? It's kind of like, well, we are providers of steel fabrication for oil field or services or oil and gas companies in Canada. Okay, so that's your product. Your market seems to be for an industry within a geographical range, right? So how good is your product or service for that market? Right? How well do they fit? How competitive are you to keep winning, right, in that market for that product that you provide or service that you provide? The third component is called unique value proposition. So a unique value proposition is basically comes down to how you win. Why is it your competitors choose you your customers choose you over any other competitor or even substitute for the kinds of things you offer, right? Now in public sector, not quite as competitive per se, like your unique value proposition is you're not competing with other governments per se to say, which government would you choose? However, your value proposition is, well, how do we offer the services and meet the needs of our constituents in a way that is most valuable compared to the tax bills they pay? Okay? And then finally, core activities. What is it that you actually do? Right. And so those four things really drive the definition of a strategy. And by the way, I don't need to oversimplify core activities. Those could be things that you have in-house. Those could be things that you outsource. And those could be things that you contract. So that whole build, buy, rent concept of capabilities, right? We build certain things that we do in-house to their employees, or we rent certain services like contractors, consultants like me. So the core activities, there's like, but what do you as an organization really do? So four things. Always remember these four things, right? Goals, product market fit, unique value proposition, and core activities. And if you can get at those in whatever way, you have a basic and clear understanding of an organization's strategy.
I love that list. I'm going to think about that list. Now, how does HR use that list? They discovered all the answers. And how do they use that list for their own purposes?
Yeah. So let me start with goals, right? Goals is an interesting one because that's kind of the basics. And this is the link that or the thing that often is not quite readily, easily connected to in terms of, well, what is the activity of HR, right? Well, we recruit people, we onboard people,
We pay them.
we pay them. Well, maybe we shouldn't pay them. Maybe that should go to finance, but that's a whole other
Anyways, yes. Okay.
yeah, sure. We pay them or make sure we pay them. We manage their records. We manage privacy. We manage training. We manage benefits for them.
Yeah.
All these great things, right? And it's like, well, okay, why? Why do you do any or all of that?
So that there are employees. Okay, I'm going to answer the question. So that there are employees who are willing to do and help the organization achieve the things it wants to achieve.
Yeah, I think that's a great start there. So that is actually an HR outcome.
Okay, so having employees. Having employees doing the things that the organization needs them to do.
Right. And easily argued to say that, well, okay, if there are employees who are there and fit to do the work required, that links to the business, right?
Yes.
To the business outcomes, because the business needs people or resources to do the work that's required, right? Like, except for the fact that you don't need that at all. You could simply rent all of that workforce.
Could you? Sure.
You could outsource 100% of your workforce outside of the executive team and just say, listen, we actually don't have to have HR because we rent or contract or outsource everything that we need to do to produce the outcomes and value that we want to provide to our customers.
Would that be an HR strategy at that point?
Yeah.
Okay.
So my point is, so what does this need to link to? Like, if you have HR, what does it need to link to from a business strategy perspective? And the business strategy goals typically are super simple, right? We need to improve productivity. That means reducing costs or increasing revenues or doing a combination of getting more outputs for the same or less level of input, right? So that's thing one. Thing two might be improving innovation and adapting to the environment. So it's like, I need to be responsive to my customers. I need to be responsive to my citizens. I need to be responsive to the capabilities that are out there. And I have competitors who are going to try to be as responsive as well. And I have competing substitutes, right? And this applies to governments, right? Like, governments face the fact that, well, maybe we don't need government to do certain things anymore that we used to because we can do it for ourselves much more cheaply, or there are alternative service providers who can actually do it more effectively than my local or higher level of government can do for me. So I don't want to pay a tax for that. I'd rather pay a fee for that, right? Who knows? Well, not who knows, that exists, right? So there's competing services and products. So improving innovation and adapting to the environment is typically a top priority of any business that's within their goals. And then there's a goal of just keeping us from screwing it all up or not being able to actually meet any of those goals, right? And that's really comes down to risk. So reducing the risk of not being able to deliver. So if you think about those three things, how does your HR outcome link to those three core business outcomes? Improving productivity, improving innovation and adapting to the environment, and reducing the risk of not being able to deliver, right? That's what I mean when I say there's a bit of a missing link. So an HR outcome that sort of says, well, we're here to make sure that the people are there to do the work. Okay, so are you here to reduce the risk of their people not being able to deliver the work? And if you say yes to that, it's like, that's a keep me out of jail card. That's like, okay, all you need to do is make sure that people are employed and that we don't have to fire them because they did something illegal or we did something illegal, and we're good, right? That's real core base, fundamental HR, but that's the value proposition that HR is offering to support and sustain the business and the business strategy, right? So you can be very clear about that. and then we get into, well, what about all of this CEO rhetoric, right? Like what happens when a CEO says people are our most important asset,
Yes.
right? Does that mean that HR is now strategic, or does that mean just that people are really important to get our work done? So sure, right. So it's still not loaded. It's still open widely to a lot of interpretation of whether that's strategic or not. But the core key, I say, is the link. Here is those goals. Like, how are you linking to those business outcome goals?
Mm-hmm. And you kind of talked about being able to link to those business outcome goals at, like at a very basic level. We're going to keep people employed, but you could get a heck of a lot more sophisticated than that.
Oh, for sure.
But then I find that, people are pretty bought into that basic stuff. They know they need it. It's legislated, whatever it is, they know they need it. How do you, when you start to get into more sophisticated activities to drive value for the business, what do you need to get support for that? Like, let's say engagement, for example. That's, we need engaged employees. And sure, a lot of places will agree that you need engaged employees, but it kind of just fades. And when you're faced with all kinds of other demands, it's like, yes, we need engaged employees, but we also need this and that and the other thing. And like, how does HR make its case? Do you need to make its case? We need to make our case?
So yes, you always need to make your case. I will put it that way. I don't think that and then that ranges too. It could just be as simple as, you need this, it, I can provide it. That's right. That's a case. Or it could be all the way to a financial business case. It says, okay, we're going to spend $1 million a year of training on a specific capability that we know helps us to win in the marketplace. And without that capability, we won't win. So $1 million of training needs to turn into sustaining or increasing revenues of $10 million a year. Well, that's a 10 to 1 ROI. Would you walk away from that? Right? If you gave me $1 and I gave you $10 back, would you walk away from that? No, right? So you have to kind of build the case. And like, I'm speaking in very simple terms, and that's probably the other concern here. HR is sophisticated. You're absolutely right. The profession is sophisticated. There's a lot of components to it. There's a lot of data out there. And in fact, there's a lot of information out there, but there's not enough insight, right? So, our time to fill a position. Okay, so who cares, right? Who cares how fast it takes you to get a vacancy filled? Because I'm looking for the best. I'm not looking for the first. But if it's my front line, it's like, well, my store revenue means I can only keep 2 tills open. And once that backs up to 5 people in line, the 6th person in line walks next door to the other grocery store down the road, and they get that sale. So in fact, not having 3 to 4 tills open is reducing my ability to generate revenue, right? So you better fill that vacancy, and you better fill it fast, right? And so, okay, so there's a link there to a business outcome, right? And people get that intuitively.
Yeah.
They get that, right?
They do, but I find that a lot of times in HR, we're motivated by that, the leader that comes into our office and is anxious about something. And it's not in business terms, it's in their personal terms. So the leader comes in and says, I'm supposed to cover 4 shifts. I can only cover 3. We've got lines. My people are stressed out. I'm stressed out. Help me not be stressed out. And we go run around and we deal with that guy that's stressed out.
That's a great example. It exists everywhere, right? But it's up to HR to be a little bit more business-minded about it, right? It's like, I want to help you, but I want to help you be successful. What does success mean? Well, you have goals and targets to meet. And plus, I want to make sure I manage the risk of you burning out and not being there to meet any goal at all.
That's
right?
true. Yeah.
So there's a risk factor. Get the risk
Yeah.
factor. So you know what, Len, sounds like you're burning out. Maybe you need to talk to EAP. And it's like, oh, thank goodness we have that service. And we pay for that service to cover that risk, right? Okay, fine. Or, Len, it sounds like you don't have enough capacity to get all the work done in front of you that needs to get done. Let's think about ways to shore up that capacity. And by the way, Len, you don't have any budget to hire anybody else. So it's not necessarily about having more people all the time. It might be about, well, my people are kind of slow and inefficient. Well, do we need to invest in a little bit of training here to get them more efficient?
Mm-hmm. But sometimes that leader in your office is the one who's slow and inefficient.
Yeah, I think I've said this before to you. Like, people usually turn to me last when they're saying it's about org design, because they've already said, oh, it's about our people. Sure, let's invest in training them. Okay, now we've trained them and things are still not working, right? And then, it might be about our systems and our processes. So we try to make those systems and processes more efficient and effective. And then we have to train people in that. And it might be our technology. So no, that's not working. And then we look at our manager team and say, well, maybe the problem's you. So we try to make sure we invest in management training and leadership development and capabilities like that. And that still doesn't seem to get us the results that we're looking for. It's like, oh, well, maybe it's the way that the system is designed. And that's when I get called. And, my mission is to turn that around and say, start with the design of the system, because the design of the system is what is forcing people to work the way they're working for the most part. Right. So that's when the manager comes in and says, well, what's that cause for you not being productive? And it's like, well, I have to do this, and this, and these systems, and I don't get along with Jody. And you have to parse it all into what are the different components of the cause of that symptom. And you can see if there's something systemic about it that needs to be addressed, right? It's like, maybe you have too many people reporting to you, or maybe you're accountable for some of the wrong things in your job, or maybe the way your department is structured actually prevents you from having the communications you need to have in order for it to work. So you're spending a whole lot of your time going around that constraint. And that's strategic HR. That's thinking about the problem in terms of what are the outcomes we want that help the business to be more efficient, more productive, or reduce risk. And how do I help a human being understand that and overcome that? That's being strategic about HR. Being HR as a core function says, well, I have three levers to pull. Do you want to train somebody? Do you want to fire somebody? Or do you just want to have a team building exercise or something like that?
Right. Well, right.
That's really not that strategic, because all you're doing is saying, well, these are the only things I can do. Pick what you can do, and you decide if that's going to solve your problem.
So how do we go about that? We've talked about some great examples of how to just change our focus on some of the things that happen to us on a daily basis. How do we go from the business strategy, which would indicate a billion things we could do, to the things we actually do?
What do you need to do in terms of an HR strategy? You need to think about it as a subset of that, those four those four elements of business strategy, and saying, okay, well, how do I link what we do in HR to each of those business strategy components? And then how do I use the exact same formula for HR? Like, what are our HR goals? What are our HR unique value propositions? What are our HR core activities? And what is our HR product market fit? Do we actually provide all the services needed or not? And what are the services we provide? And to whom? Do we only exist for managers, right? Like, a lot of people will say that I never see HR because they're only there to help our senior leaders. They're never there to help people on the front line. So there's a product market focus there implied in that, right? HR is actually serving the management of the company. They're not actually there to serve the front line. And in some cases, that's a healthy strategy because management should be there to serve their people's needs, not necessarily HR. But does management serve their needs? I don't know. That's a different story where then HR would have to say, if I'm not serving people, frontline people directly, that's your job as a manager. How best can I help you make sure that you're doing that?
Okay, Len, we're running out of time. My final question is, you've obviously learned to do this somewhere along the line. I hope you didn't just learn to do it at on the fly. I hope you have some tips for how someone else can really incorporate these ideas and make it part of the way they do HR.
Gosh, I wish I had a simple answer to that. So first and foremost, I think that, I'll just say I'm not making it all up.
Okay, so where did you learn it from?
Right. It's a combination of connecting disciplines, right? So I didn't actually start in HR, and I'm still not in HR.
Okay.
I started in economics and then industrial organizational psychology, which is really the study of people, work, and organizations, which, again, you'd think, well, okay, that's good psychology. But industrial psychology sort of says, well, the basis of that perspective is productivity, right? So there's a field, let's just call it an academic field of study that says, well, what do we have to study, learn, understand academically and through research, empirical research, that helps people to be more productive, right? And by the way, just let's link it to the human condition and say, well, why do we care if people are productive? And that's a core form of individual and collective purpose. People actually need to feel productive. And that's the myth of engagement as well. People don't get engaged and then are suddenly productive. When people feel productive, they get engaged.
Chicken and the egg.
There's the causal factor. The causal factor is productivity, right? If you're on a team that's winning and growing and improving its performance, you're waking up every day going, what am I going to learn today? How much better are we going to get today? If you're on a team that's having parties, pizza parties, and still losing games, those parties are going to become complaining sessions pretty darn quickly, right? So it's happiness, it's satisfaction, but not for the sake of that. It's for the sake of accomplishing something, right? In any case, so there's the study of that. Industrial organizational psychology sort of links to that, sort of the human condition and plus the human condition of doing work. And so I studied a little bit of that, and then just there's a whole real good field of strategy and strategic HR.
Yeah, it's funny you talk about the HR strategy, and I'm there are books. However, I've been doing this channel for 2.5 years, and there are very, very few people out there that are willing to talk about it, that think that will say that is their thing. And I'm not sure why that is. I'm going to find out eventually. We should close it now. Okay. Well, thanks, Len. I loved in that how you reversed the relationship between engagement and productivity, where productivity actually drives engagement, not just the other way around. That's an interesting idea, but we've reached the end of this episode. Thanks for listening out there, and we'll catch you next time when I talk with another insightful guest.